Hello there, everyone. This is Andy Nicol again, the tutor for the Perfectly Spoken Advanced course. I hope you're all well, and thank you for tuning in to this broadcast this is lesson 13 in the course on the grammar of speculation and deduction. This is the second lesson on this subject. So, we're going to be today, in the previous lesson, in lesson 11, we looked at predominantly modal verbs to do with speculation. And we've got one more to look at, which we'll do in this lesson. And then we'll look at adverbs and adjectives as well. So here's a brief summary of what we're going to look at. We look at should and ought to express an expectation. I'll explain a bit more later. We'll be looking at words or phrases to express probability. Might, may, and could we've looked at to talk about possibility, sort of 50-50. We're looking at probability, so we're looking at more 75-80% like probability. And then we'll be looking at words or phrases to express certainty. Okay, so as I said to you before, we're going to be looking at should, so that's should or ought to, that should say. And here we go. So should and ought to, obviously, you'll be familiar with should and ought to in terms of giving advice. You know, you've got a toothache, you should go to the dentist, you're feeling really unwell, and your friend says, oh, you really should go to the doctor, or you ought to go to the doctor, and so on. However, we can also use should and ought to express something that we expect to be true or expect to happen. For example, well, first of all, the form, it's should and ought to plus the infinitive of the verb. This is the bare infinitive. It's the infinitive without to. After modal verbs, remember, there's no to. So, for example, she left over an hour ago. She ought to be there by now. Okay, we expect her to be wherever, to arrive there. Okay, I'm going to disappear for a moment, as always. And then also we can talk about the past. And in the past, we use, again, should and ought to, but this time we use have and the past participle. This is what we call the perfect infinitive, have plus the past participle. Okay, so an example is, they should have received the message this morning. They should have received the message this morning. We expect them to have received it. It was probably sent some time ago, so we expect them to have received the message. Okay, so let's look now at some more examples and see if you can guess what we need to say in each case. Okay, so here we go. So this is starting to get dark. This is what we call in English dusk or twilight, just before the sun goes down. Okay, and the situation is, just going to disappear again so you can see this. If we leave now, we something home before it gets dark. We something home before it gets dark. So obviously we're talking about present future, well, future in this case. So if you can pause the recording, if you want to think about what the possibility is, you can pause the recording anytime. So if we leave now, we should or ought to be home before it gets dark. Alternatively, you could say we ought to get home before it gets dark. Get can also mean or we ought to arrive home before it gets dark. Okay. Here's the next example. Okay, so you've got a woman there. She's holding a gift or a present, and the situation is her present by now. I sent it over a week ago. She's something her present by now. I sent it over a week ago. So the expectation is that she now has the present. The expectation is she now has the present. So we could say she should or ought to have got her present by now. This is in British English. Americans use gotten. She should or ought to have gotten her present by now. More formally, she should ought to have received her present by now, and so on. Okay, some different possibilities. Okay, so moving on now, we're going to look at some adjectives and adverbs to talk about probability and certainty. We've looked at modal verbs to make speculations. We're now going to look at some adjectives and adverbs. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is expressing probability. And there are a number of expressions we can use. Likely, unlikely, and probably we're going to look at. Okay, so adjectives and adverbs then. We can use the adjectives likely or unlikely to express probability. And the forms are subject, he, she, it, we, they, etc., Peter, whatever, plus the verb to be. It's an adjective after all, so the verb to be, likely, unlikely, plus to plus infinitive. As an example, she, subject, is, she's, the verb to be, likely to become, to, and then the infinitive, become the next Prime Minister. She's likely to become the next Prime Minister. Okay? Remember, after an adjective, we tend to use an infinitive of the verb, so this follows the rule usually. It's difficult to understand. After an adjective, we usually use an infinitive. Okay, so that's likely and unlikely. We can also use a slightly different form, which is it is likely or it is unlikely, plus that, plus a full clause. Okay, another example here. I'm going to disappear so you can see it. So here's the example. It is highly unlikely. Highly is just an adverb. That's an adverb of degree. It's just modifying this sentence, making it stronger, making unlikely stronger. It's highly unlikely that you will be able to get into the VIP room. It's by invite only. A VIP room is at a fancy party with celebrities, important people, as VIP, very important person. So it's highly unlikely that you'll be able to get into the VIP room. It's by invite only. Only people who have been invited can get in. Okay. So let's move on and look at some other possibilities. There is, apart from likely, we have the adverb. Remember, likely is an adjective, so it's the verb to be before it and then followed by the infinitive. Probably is an adverb, so the form is different. It either comes before the main verb and after the auxiliary if it's a positive sentence. For example, don't worry, we won't miss the start. We'll probably be back by 10. We'll probably be back by 10. We'll probably be back. It's positive, so it comes after will, but before the verb be in this case. However, in negative sentences, it comes before the auxiliary, before the will, or won't in this case. They probably won't get married until spring next year. They probably won't get married until spring next year. Okay, so there's the difference here between the positive sentence and the negative in terms of where the adverb goes. Okay, so let's have a look at some examples. So we've got here a rather nice collection of bikes in a bike shop, and the sentence is, I'm off again, my parents are something to give me a new bike for my birthday. Okay, so we've got the verb to be here, are. So we would expect to use an adjective here. So likely to give me a new bike for my birthday. Okay? You could also say are unlikely to give me a bike if they don't want to spend any money. Whatever, or they're going to give you something else. They're unlikely is also possible. But we're sticking with positive here. It is, in this case, we have it is, so it's that plus clause, so it's likely that my parents will give me a new bike for my birthday. Or we could say, my parents, this time we've got give the verb, so we're going to use the adverb, will probably give me a new bike for my birthday. Okay, so let's look at another example. This time we've got a very difficult looking maths equation on a blackboard, which has been written in chalk. And so we've got some algebra, an equation there, and the sentence is, my brother is something to know the answer, he hates maths. Again, we've got the verb to be here, my brother is, followed by the infinitive to know, and the answer is, if he hates maths, then he's unlikely to know the answer. Okay, I'm going to disappear again so you can see the next sentence. Again, we've got it is here, so this is the other form that we can use. It is plus that plus clause. So it is unlikely that my brother knows the answer. He hates maths. And the third sentence, we've got the verb know, so we're going to modify it with the adverb, my brother. Now remember, this time, he hates maths, so we're looking for a negative sentence. So remember the change of the position of probably won't know the answer. He hates maths. My brother probably won't know the answer. He hates maths. So in positive, will probably know. In negative, probably won't know. Okay? All right then. So that's probability. Next on the agenda is certainty. This time we're really sure about what we think. Probability is like maybe 70%, more than 50-50, but not entirely sure. Certainty is much higher than that, okay? So for this, we use the expressions such as bound to, sure to, and the adverb definitely. So the adjectives bound to, sure to, and definitely. Okay, so here we go. Again, adjectives and adverbs. We use the adjectives bound, bound to, and sure, sure to express certainty. And here's the form. As you expect, verb to be plus bound plus to plus infinitive. He's bound to get lost. He's got no sense of direction. You know, he goes to an unfamiliar city, I don't know, Rome, Paris, or whatever. He doesn't have a map, or even if he does have a map, he's really terrible, he's rubbish at directions, so he's bound to get lost. We're really sure that he will get lost. He's bound to get lost. Another possibility is sure. Sure to. Exactly the same form. Be plus sure plus to plus infinitive. And here's an example. If you try to climb that tree, you're sure to fall. It's really slippery. It's very difficult to climb. It's slippery. You're sure to fall. Okay, so here's the other possibility that we can use, as well as these adjectives, is the adverb. We've looked at probably for probability. For certainty, we can use definitely. Definitely. So, again, just like probably, it becomes before the main verb and it comes before the main verb and after the auxiliary in positive sentences. They'll definitely win the match. They're 3 goals up on their opponents. They've scored 3 goals and their opponent's 0, or they've scored 4 and their opponent's 1. They're up 3 goals, or 3 goals up on their opponents. So they'll definitely win. So after the auxiliary, will here, before the verb win. However, again, in negative sentences, it comes before the auxiliary. So she definitely won't understand Juan. She doesn't speak Spanish. I'm sure that she won't understand him. She definitely won't understand Juan. So here definitely comes before the won't because it's negative. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. So let's look at some examples and see if you can guess what the missing information is. So here we go. So we've got a guy looking at a tablet here, and it's for a loan application. So he's obviously thinking about applying for a loan. You apply for a loan. We looked at in the vocabulary of money in the previous lesson. And here is the sentence. If you have enough savings, the bank lend you the money. Okay, so we have certainty here. We think it's certain that the bank will give you this money. So we could use are bound or are sure to lend you the money. Yes, the bank are bound to or sure to lend you the money. And then again, if you want to use the adverb, if you have enough savings, the bank, well, this is positive, so it comes after the auxiliary and before the verb, will definitely lend you the money. Will definitely lend you the money. Okay, let's look at another example now. Okay, there's a picture of a football team. I think it's Juventus in this case, the Italian club. And here's an example sentence. Oops, I have to disappear so you can see it. They are something win the Champions League. They're easily the best team in Europe. So we think that it is certain that they are going to win the Champions League. They are bound to or sure to win the Champions League. They're easily the best team in Europe. Again, we can use the adverb here, the adverb definitely. So, is this positive or negative? Well, they win is positive. So, they will definitely win the Champions League. Okay, so remember in the positive sentence, definitely comes after the auxiliary. Okay, and let's look at another example here. Okay, so what is that? If you have any idea, what is that We've got a lot of cars there all lined up on the road, not moving. In English, if you know what it is a traffic jam. Traffic jam. Okay? So here is the situation. We're stuck in traffic. Something be back in time for the meeting, so just start without us. So do you think they are going to be back or not? Well, probably they won't be back in time for the meeting. So we could say they definitely won't be back in time for the meeting. We definitely won't. Again, definitely here comes before the auxiliary because it's negative. We definitely won't be back in time for the meeting. Okay, so this time I'd like you to look at some sentences and see if you can choose the correct option for each one. So the first one, we probably won't or are likely get married until next June. Well, we don't think we will get married until next June. It's we probably won't get married until next June. Remember, are likely would be followed by an infinitive anyway. Be are likely to get married. Okay, so probably won't is the answer here. Number 2. My parents left at 2 p.m., 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Is that present or past? Well, obviously it's in the past. So they should arrive or should have arrived at the airport at least half an hour ago. Well, half an hour ago is definitely past. So we use should plus have plus participle. They should have arrived at the airport at least half an hour ago. Okay, next one. Sally's really lazy. Okay, she doesn't like working. She's lazy. So is it she definitely won't or is sure to help you to tidy up? Well, this is a question of meaning. Which of these suggests if she's lazy, she doesn't like working? So obviously the answer is she definitely won't help you to tidy up. She definitely won't help you to tidy up. Okay, and I'm going to disappear again so you can see the next one. Okay, it's sure or unlikely to rain later. The weather forecast said it would be sunny all day. Well, if it's going to be sunny all day, said the weather forecast said it, then we don't expect it to rain. So we would say it's unlikely to rain later. It's unlikely to rain later. Okay, so let's look at some more examples. So here, remember, definitely and bound to both express certainty, so there's no difference in meaning, but look at the form around it. Is it she'll definitely like the cake, or she'll bound to like the cake, she loves chocolate? Well, remember, bound to is an adjective, so we need the verb to be. So it's not possible here. Is she'll definitely like the cake, she loves chocolate. She'll definitely like the cake, she loves chocolate. Next one. They'll probably or definitely be back at 8 p.m., but I'm not really sure. Well, I'm not really sure, then we can't be talking about certainty. We're more likely to talk about probability. So the answer is they'll probably be back at 8 p.m. It's more likely to use they'll probably be back at 8 p.m. Okay, next one. Again, definitely bound to, both mean certainty, but again, we're looking at the form here. So we're definitely to win the match, or we'll definitely win the match, or we are bound to win the match. We've got by far the best players. Which do you think it is? Well, we are, followed by an infinitive. We expect the adjective here. We're bound to win the match. We've got by far the best players. Okay, I'm going to disappear again here. And it's bound or likely that I'll be late for the meeting tomorrow. I've got some work to finish. Well, it's bound. Bound is followed by to plus the infinitive. So here we've got that. So it has to be, it's likely that I'll be late for the meeting tomorrow. I've got some work to finish. It's likely I'll be late for the tomorrow, so I've got some work to finish. Okay, so that's more or less it for this particular lesson. So we've looked at in lesson 11 the modal verbs to talk about speculation. Must, if you're very sure. There's a knock on the door. Well, that must be the postman. You're expecting the postman at that time. That must be the postman. If you're not so sure, that might, could be, etc. If it's impossible, then that can't be the postman. He's already been. He came about an hour ago, so it can't be the postman. And now we've looked at other expressions to talk about speculation. So should they left over an hour ago, they should have arrived at their destination in the past, or they should arrive at 9 o'clock tomorrow. For present and future, you should plus infinitive. Definitely, bound to, sure to for certainty, probably, and likely for probability. Okay, there is a little test that accompanies this lesson, so please do use it to do some further practice. In the next lesson, we're going to be looking, this is lesson 14, we're going to be looking at some vocabulary. Again, this time it will be the vocabulary of the arts. Got a nice picture of Andy Warhol exhibition, the famous pop artist from the USA. And we'll be looking at the content will include the vocabulary of the art world. So we look at words like installations, sculptures, still life, etc. We'll be looking at colour idioms, and we'll also be looking at another number of other expressions to do with the arts. So I really do hope that you can find the time to tune into the next lesson. I hope you've enjoyed to do today's lesson, and please do try the practice exercises that accompany it. Thanks for listening. See you soon. Bye.